Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Katie Weaver Show. This is Katie. I'm your host. I'm so happy to be here. If you are listening live, I want to welcome you. And if you're listening to a replay down the road, I want to welcome you too. I want you to know that I am streaming from Facebook and YouTube. That's Katie Weaver Domestic Mystic, so you should be able to find me either way. And I'm just glad to be here. How did that full moon eclipse land for you guys? Sorry, new moon eclipse. Where am I? It was a new moon eclipse. How did it land for you guys? I feel like a lot of people were just kind of experiencing some level of, I want to say deja vu, but it's probably not quite right for some of you. But there seems to be a blast from the past in the air where people are either thinking about or experiencing old people or situations coming up for them. The Daily Dish has talked about forgiveness and self-forgiveness a few times here in the last week or two. Uh, Today, the Daily Dish was about expecting a blast from the past. With the reminder that, some people are in the rearview mirror because they need to be, but not always. It's good to have some discretion, but at any rate, that seems to be where the collective energy is at. And it could just be within you, right? Just thinking about some old situations or people or, stuff that you have cared about in the past that is coming up for you. Hey, Quelly, welcome. So that's kind of where I'm seeing things, but I do want to tell you guys I'm in the chat room. If you want to go to 12radio.com and click on the chat, you'll be redirected into our Facebook chat, and you'll see my banner there at the top of the page. However, I also have my eyes on both of the comment sections from YouTube and Facebook. So if you're just commenting there, that shows right up in my algorithm. So that's simple enough. We had an interesting weekend, a good weekend. All the kids were home. We threw a bridal/baby shower for an incoming niece. My nephew Stone, his fiance is having a baby in a couple of months, and they're getting married next month. So we threw kind of a big joint party, and we decided to do the kind of party that everyone's invited to. It used to be, and maybe this is more cultural to where I live, but men weren't invited to baby showers. It was just all for the women, which is fine. But in our family, well, we wanted the men to come. So it was a bridal/baby shower for everybody. And it was great. We had a ton of fun. Beautiful weather. It wasn't too hot. It wasn't raining. We've had quite a bit of rain the last week, so which is amazing, by the way. We need it terribly. But anyway, it was a really nice party. It was an outdoor event. But I was in charge of the cake bar. I've been wanting to try this. So I keep seeing these reels and TikToks and stuff for people doing this at fairs and events. And as you know, or maybe you don't, but I haven't done a fair or an event. I've only done one this year. I just haven't been up to it. But if I were younger and healthier, I would do this all day long because people love this and it's super fun. So our bride-to-be is gluten-free. She has celiac, so very gluten-free. So I had come up with 3 different kinds of cake in gluten-free mixes. So I did red velvet, chocolate, and yellow. And then I made 3 different kinds of frosting. And I made the frosting, not from the can. I made it, but I made chocolate frosting and vanilla frosting that was dyed blue because the baby's a boy, and red velvet frosting. Or no, red velvet. Cream cheese frosting for that red velvet cake. So, and I put it in big tubes so people could decorate their own cake with it. And then I had 12 different little toppings you could put on. I had raspberries, blueberries, M&Ms, some shakers of sprinkles, Chex Mix things that were gluten-free, gummy bears, other kinds of candy. I just had all different kinds of things. And then I had caramel and chocolate sauce. So you could just approach the cake bar and make your cake however you wanted to. And the cakes were they were like this long, that wide. They're not very big, just a little individual cake. And I made 50 of them, so there was plenty. And a lot of people made an extra or ate two. A lot of people made one to take home because there was a lot of extra, which was great. I didn't bring home an ounce of it, which was even better. But that was really fun. It turned out awesome. So I think I'm going to do that for our Christmas Eve party this year. I usually do some kind of fun, different dessert. And we did a parfait bar for a couple of years that was fun. But I think I'm going to do the cake bar this time and let people. But think like for Christmas, you can do like white cake with white frosting and crushed peppermint, coconut. Oh, I had coconut on mine too. I'm going to do a gingerbread cake. And then one of my frostings will be a nutmeg frosting. Anyway, I know we're talking about months in advance, but that's where my brain went. Anyway, so it was fun. And then on Sunday night, after the kids left, Scott and I drove up into the mountains above our house with our little side by side. Our I don't know what you call them. No, they're not an RV. They're an ATV. Our little ATV that we bought this year. And this has become one of our favorite things to do is to go up in the evening when it's cool, and then the mountains are especially cool, and take a night ride. And we saw three moose. One moose that was just kind of wandering through the forest, and we stopped. She crossed the road in front of us and then stood up on the side hill and watched us for a long time. And we just sat very quietly with her, and it was so cool. But then on our way out, we were quite a bit closer to the car. A mama moose crossed the road in front of us with a baby. And that was so cool. And then very close to the car were five deer hanging around. so, so that was fun. We saw a really big owl too. But anyway, you could see anything up in those hills. There's bears, there's tails that there's wolves up there, but I've never seen a wolf in there. But it doesn't mean they're not. And then there's mountain lions. And mountain lions are on my bucket list. I have never seen a mountain lion other than in captivity. So I always keep my eyes to the trees because I would give anything to see a mountain lion in the wild. Though my husband says he would rather not. Anyway, but it was a great ride. So that's pretty much what we've been up to. Some crafting and stuff. Gosh, our all that smoke cover that had finally melted off is back. I don't know whose smoke we have now, but it is getting to me. So if I sound hoarse, that's why. There's so much smoke. But also they're cutting grain right now. And when you live as rural as I do, agriculture is actually the worst pollutant to certain times of the year to our air, and grain particularly. There's all the chaff in the air from the grain, and it's icky. So anyway, it's getting to me. So I'm fine. Just air quality, boo. But anyway, today we're going to talk about sacred trees, and I'm really excited for this topic. I know I've said this a lot of times, but trees are sacred to me. And I know they are to a lot of you as well. I was raised by a mother who would never cut a tree unless she absolutely had to. And even then, she felt horrible about it. There was a time when she needed her front steps were starting to, they were concrete and they were starting to like tip. So they needed to replace the steps completely. And Scott and my dad had made a plan to build a deck. She wanted a deck on the front of her house. So they were like, hey, you know what? We've got time. We can do it right now. We'll build this awesome deck. The problem is she had a big crabapple tree right next to her house, right in the way of that deck. And she did not want that tree to be cut down. And so they built the deck around the tree. So kind of around the base of the tree, there was a little bench, like a hexagonal bench around it, so that and that tree just was right there shading that deck. But that was the steps we'd go to not cut down trees around here. I'll be honest, there's two or three trees that are just destroying the roofing on my house because I won't let Scott cut them down. They're too close. They're not trees that were planted, they're volunteers. But I just cannot see getting rid of them. So he trims at them a little bit here and there, but they all have made some pretty good dents. My roofing is metal, so the side of the roofing is all dented on those sides because of those trees. But damn it, I don't want to get rid of them. But what has happened here is we have had an old tree in the process of dying for the last 2 years. We have this big mountain ash, like one of the biggest mountain ashes I've ever seen. You see them up in the mountains around here all the time, and they're pretty spindly. This is a big, thick tree. And I have loved this tree over the years. Mountain ash are trees that put on all the clusters of bright orange berries. And then here in the winter, when it's really cold, you have flocks of blackbirds that will descend on that tree. And when I tell you it's a cloud of birds, they will hit that tree and gobble on it. And then if you even so much as blink towards them, they will just be gone in a big puff. It's crazy. But I have loved watching those birds over the years and just loved that tree. But last summer, it started dying. Like branches were dying, leaves were dying, like more than just a little die off. It was starting to look a little bit serious. And so I did talk to a friend that's an arborist. And then I did some of my own research too. And what I learned is that those trees have a pretty short lifespan. Mountain ash typically only live for 20-ish, 15 to 20-ish years, and my tree'd be close to 30 at least. My house was built the same year I was born, so it could be as old as 50. But they thought it was more like 30. But at any rate, it's just an old tree that's dying, and you can't save it. There was no steps to take to help. We did fertilize, we did add more water, we did trim back all of the dead to try to give it a chance to only put energy into the new stuff, but it just isn't. This was last year. It just wasn't happening because, unfortunately, it's just an old tree that's dying, and that's what happens. But God, I hated seeing it. And so this spring, we had all this new growth that came up around it, like new little, you know, sprigs of the tree coming up. And I was thinking maybe we'll be okay. Maybe this tree's going to kind of regenerate around itself. So Scott again cut back everything that had died, which was most of the big branches, like all of them actually. But we had all this new stuff coming up. So I'm like, okay, okay, we'll be okay. We're not okay. It's all dead now. The entire tree is it's just dead. And it breaks my heart because just watching an old tree like that just go through its last gasps of old age has sucked. So now I'm going to leave it up for now and probably hang some pumpkins or something Halloweeny on it for a while. And then probably by spring we'll cut it completely out and think about putting something else there. But that's what happens sometimes. We know this. Trees do die. They are a part of the circle of life. But it got me thinking about trees and the sacred nature of trees in mythology, and what we know about trees. And so I thought this would be a great episode for us in talking about the sacredness of trees. So let me get Luminous pulled up here. It also got me thinking about a tree when I was a kid. There was a huge weeping willow in our backyard. And, I told you before, when my parents bought their house, my mom hated the color of the house. She hated the stucco on the house. And they did eventually really make it theirs. But in the meantime, she loved the trees, and she especially loved that weeping willow. It was an ancient tree, like enormous with the huge canopy, that kind of thing. And that tree was everything, man. She loved it. And so, and she had said many times that she bought the house mostly because of that tree. But That tree provided more entertainment and fun. I can remember as a younger kid when we'd go to the library and check out books in the summer, then we'd take our pillows and blankets out and lay under that tree to read. I can remember doing homework under that tree lots of times. I can remember us playing with dolls under the tree, playing with other toys under the tree. We would make dolls out of the hollyhocks and then pull them under that tree to play with them. I can remember as a teenager uh, sneaking under that tree with my boyfriend, because it kind of made its own little private room in there. So whether you were reading a book or kissing your boyfriend, that tree it was special to all of us. I still think about that tree. It's gone now, of course, but that tree was precious. Some trees just are. They all are really, but some are just more you connect to more than others, I guess. It's a good idea, Jane. She said there are cool things to do with old trees, hobbit houses, little libraries made from them. That's a good idea. I will research. Maybe there's something fun we can do still. Alrighty, so at any rate, I called this edition The Old Ones Among Us, The Ancient History of Trees. The first part of my musings or my article is just thinking about those trees, the uh, the willow and the trees on my own property. When we bought our house, there were 53 trees here. I think we still have around 53 trees. We have had some trees die over the years, and then new trees that have come up. We have never planted a tree on this property. You just can't. You can't plant more trees where we are. And in fact, we've pretty much given up on having a garden anymore because our property is so shaded that it doesn't. And especially because our next door neighbors have as many trees as we do. So we're a long acre, and the people next to us have trees that run across their whole side yard, as do we. And it just creates so much shade, which I'm not complaining about at all. However, we used to have this magnificent garden 15 years ago or more, but now it just doesn't happen. We so in our front yard, like in our flower bed, we grow some tomatoes and stuff, but that's pretty much all the effort we put into anymore because the trees are making it a little tough to grow stuff. But it's okay. They're trees. They get to. We used to have cherries and apricots and apples, and over time the apples and the pine trees in the backyard have completely choked out the cherries and the apricots. They were also old trees and they've all died out. But interestingly, a ton of cherries have come up in the pasture that volunteered from those original cherries, and now they are getting thicker and putting on fruit every year. So that's pretty cool too. All right. So why did trees become sacred? Well, I mean, imagine what a tree was to an ancient, right? You come in contact with tree products all day, every day. Lumber, fruit, medicine, paper, furniture, firewood, and other products too that you come in contact with because of trees. But the ancients, anything that they gleaned from a tree, they probably did themselves. Their relationship to trees was about survival. Trees provided shelter, fuel, uh, also, well, fuel for cooking and for warmth. Trees provide fruit, nuts, medicine, tools, weapons, baskets, boats, furniture, building materials. The ancients relied on the trees for life in many, many ways. Not to mention shade from the sun, roots that held soil in place, branches that provided habitat for animals that people hunted or depended on. And large trees became landmarks, meeting places, boundary markers, centers of communities, right? I mean, you can still ask for someone for directions and they say, turn out the corner where the big tree is, right? That's still a thing. But in ancient communities, trees, they held the land, they marked the land. They were, in essence, a living map. And then, of course, what we know about what goes on underneath your feet. The roots that disappear into a world beneath your feet, the trunk that occupies the same space that we do, and then the branches that reach towards the heavens. Trees connect down below, up above, and in the here and now. So, no big surprise, just like a lot of the things we've been studying this last year, a lot of cultures had very similar beliefs around trees and the sacredness of them, even though their other parts of their spirituality or religious beliefs had nothing to do with each other. Trees kind of did. Trees became places where gods gathered, where spirits lived, where ancestors could be contacted, and where humans could approach the divine. Some cultures protected entire sacred groves where cutting trees was forbidden or tightly controlled, and we still do that. Others revered particular individual trees, but trees were special, trees were sacred. We know that under the forest floor, there is an entire community that's unseen, well, by us, of roots, fungi, microorganisms, nutrients, water, and chemical signals. We know that trees live as a community. There is so much biologically that's happening under your feet that the trees play a huge role in, but also have symbiotic relationships with other organisms for their survival and the survival of the trees. Interesting that our ancestors may not have known that, but they knew the forest was alive and they really expressed that in various ways, right? Lots of talk about, well, for example, the Fae or other tree spirits, forest spirits. I always think about the Lord of the Rings. Remember in the Lord of the Rings, the trees that walked, the trees that fought. I always think about those trees, and not that our trees walk, but the ancient feeling of them anyway. Let's talk about the world tree. So the world tree is from Norse mythology. It's the Yggdrasil. It's an enormous sacred tree. It was described usually as an ash that stands at the center of the Norse cosmos. Its branches and roots extend through different worlds, connecting realms inhabited by gods, humans, giants, and the dead. Gods gather near it, creatures live within it, and the fate of the universe is tied to it. There's a lot of variations in different cultures of a world tree or a cosmic tree or the tree of life in Europe, Asia, and the Middle East and the Americas. Lots of ancient spiritual leaders saw trees as the base of the universe in some way. The tree of life, of course, appears in the biblical book of Genesis, standing in the Garden of Eden along the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Trees appear throughout Jewish and Christian texts. We know this. They're symbols of wisdom, righteousness, abundance, judgment, and eternal life. We also know that other traditions see sacred trees as a representation of enlightenment, creation, fertility, ancestry, or the axis around which the universe is organized. That's my favorite. In Buddhism, Buddhism has the Bodhi tree. And according to Buddhist traditions, Siddhartha Gautama attained enlightenment while meditating beneath a ficus religiosa, also known as a fig or a Bodhi tree, sacred fig. Uh, and we know that descendants and symbolic representations of that tree remain in important pilgrimage sites today. It's always a tree. Let's talk about the oak tree. The oak represented strength, thunder, and the gods in different cultures. I mean, oak trees are huge, they're hard, they have immense uses. One oak tree can create an immense amount of lumber for building homes or businesses or furniture, other things, but oak has been a tree that is widely relied on. Across ancient Europe, oak was associated with power, protection, and endurance, and the divine. The ancient Greeks connected oak with Zeus, the god of sky and thunder. At Dodona, which is one of the oldest Greek oracle sites, a sacred oak was associated with Zeus. There were ancient accounts that describe divination, involving the sounds of its leaves and other sacred objects of the sanctuary, which I think is really fascinating. If you think about, especially on a breezy day, sitting in a forest or just even under one tree and putting your phone down and shutting the hell up and listening, what do you hear? You might hear the creaks of the tree, you might hear the movement of the leaves, maybe you'd hear the birds that are in the tree, but trees speak in their own way, right? And maybe spiritually you hear something completely different from a tree, but either way, trees speak. And the ancients knew that and they were listening. In Celtic religious traditions, uh, sacred groves were very important to the Druids. They mattered in religious life, and oak was woven into a lot of traditions surrounding the Druids. Oak also became associated with thunder gods in different parts of Europe. And then there's the tree of life and death, and that would be the yew tree. Yews have been connected to death, burial grounds, immortality, and regeneration for centuries. And it's pretty interesting stuff. So yews can live for an extraordinarily long time. And because yews trunks hollow out as they grow older, determining their age, it's not the same as determining the age of, say, a redwood or a sequoia or other trees that develop rings. They don't. So they're harder to date. But there are some ancient yews in Britain that are believed to be over 1,000 years old. And some trees they claim could be much older than that. But again, that's hard to verify other than just by written record because the trees themselves, they're not as easy to date as some others are. So for that reason, you'll find old yew trees in churchyards, in ancient churchyards in Britain and other parts of Europe. Uh, in some places, though, we know that yews were considered sacred and planted on sacred burial grounds, that there is a religious practice associated with that, and also simply that they have endured. So ancient grave sites in Europe are likely to have ancient yews because they have endured. We also know that the yew is poisonous. So probably apropos, right? Apropos that it's associated with death. The needles and seed have toxic compounds, making it pretty dangerous to humans and animals if it were eaten. But the yew also is really good at regenerating. So old branches can root where they touch the ground. So yews, this is why yews can spread out like an unbelievable space the longer time they have to grow because old branches can just root where they are and something new comes from it. So we know now that trees whose center has hollowed away can actually remain alive for thousands of years because of all of the ways that it's spread out and is still getting sustenance from the ground. All right, how about the birch? I love this. We have a lot of birch in the mountains up around us, and I love birch trees. They're just something special. So, birch has been a representation of new beginnings and cleansing. It's associated with renewal, cleansing, purification, and the wonderful ability of nature to simply begin again. Why? Well, if you've ever been through an area that has been ripped apart by fire, wildfires, and I have around us many times, unfortunately, that's just a part of living near forests, right? Fires happen. Uh, or logging, and unfortunately, where Scott and I like to ride and where we like to huckleberry and stuff, the last 15 years there's been quite a bit of logging in there, and it's devastated, in my opinion, the forest. It's devastated me. I hate it. But I'll tell you what happens from that, from the fires and from the logging. The birch come back first. Ecologists call them the pioneer species because they can move into disturbed ground pretty quickly and just start beginning again and rebuilding, regrowing. So they'll grow up from really disturbed ground. Have you ever seen a place that is like slash cut, logged? It's horrible. It will take something that's beautiful and just turn it into an absolute war zone. And they leave it that way. And then pretty soon the birch says, okay, we're coming. Then they just start growing up amongst it. And with even 5, 10 years, it doesn't look at all like the place that had been slashed away. And by that time, you'll probably have some pine or other trees coming up too, but it'll be the birch that starts it all. And fire the same way. Birch is easy to recognize, right? Because it's very different. It has the bright white, silvery, gray, yellow, or even reddish bark that peels away in thin papery layers. White birches in the snow are iconic. But birch bark has had a lot of uses over the years. It's been used to make containers, roofing, baskets, writing materials, canoes, food, medicine. In Europe, birch became associated with springtime, fertility, purification, and new beginnings. Birches appeared in seasonal customs, and the tree became connected to that space where winter begins to end and the world starts to wake up again because the birch start to get buds on early. So when you start seeing the leaves starting to bud on the birch, you know that spring is really coming. I think if you're connecting to trees and something has burned your life down, connecting with birch, right? When a relationship ends, a job disappears, somebody dies, your health changes, the kids grow up and leave, you move, something else changes, and your life doesn't look like anything like it used to. That's when you have to be the birch, right? You have to bloom where you're planted. You have to grow where you are and start learning what your new normal is. And that's exactly what birch does. Then we have the ash. Ash has huge mythological connotations, particularly in Northern Europe. So, and of course, mountain ash isn't actually an ash, it's just called an ash. Because that's the kind of shit we do, right? It actually belongs to the genus Sorbus and is more like a rowan tree, but it is called the mountain ash. So I'm talking about true ashes. Uh, Ash have been associated with protection, healing, weapons, tools, and the connection between worlds. So, of course, Yggdrasil, the world tree in Norse mythology, is an ash. Ash became extraordinarily important because of its strength and flexibility. So, ash has been used for tool handles, staffs, spears, furniture, agricultural equipment, and lots of other objects because it's strong, but it also is flexible, which is called for in a lot of applications. But in Norse mythology, we also have the story of the first humans, both in the prose Edda and poetic Edda traditions. The first man and woman are called Ask and Embla, with Ask generally understanding to mean ash tree. Embla has been heavily debated what Embla actually was, but either way, the first man and woman works Ask and Embla, which is pretty interesting in comparison to Adam and Eve. Then, of course, we have the hawthorn, the fairy tree. Obviously, we have to talk about fairy trees, right? So, the hawthorn has a very complicated reputation in European folklore. So, it was associated with spring, fertility, protection, love, boundaries, fairies, and the other world. So, hawthorns were one of those trees that you maybe should benefit from, and then again, you maybe should be staying the hell away from because they could be seen kind of like fairy rings, mushrooms. We talked about those a couple weeks ago. Um, could be portals to the other world, could be a connection to the fairies that you may or may not want, could be a sacred tree to the fae that you would not want to disturb. Lots of reasons to respect the hawthorn. The hawthorn itself is deeply rooted in Irish folklore, especially solitary trees that were growing by themselves. These trees are fairy trees or fairy thorns, and there's still stories about roads, construction projects, and agricultural work being altered rather than disturbing a particularly significant hawthorn. Imagine a road having to take a jog to avoid a giant tree because that's a hawthorn, and by God, we're not messing with it because nobody wants to bear the wrath of the Fae by doing so, right? I love it. That's amazing. That's definitely the kind of thing I would do. Hawthorn also has strong associations to May and the arrival of summer in Old British and Irish seasonal traditions. Hawthorns have white or pinkish blossoms that appear in the spring, and flowering hawthorn became intertwined with May celebrations. One name, old name for hawthorn is simply May, and it gathers, that's a reference, of course, to gathering in May or the bringing in the May, which is, of course, bringing back the spring. Hawthorn also has a dual nature, however. The branches carry heavy thorns, and that can be associated with love and fertility, and also caution and death in some folklore. Bringing hawthorn flowers in the home was unlucky in some British traditions. However, the blossoms were welcomed outdoors during seasonal traditions, but in some traditions, bringing the blossoms in the house would be a really bad move. Hawthorn flowers produce an odor that some people associate with decay. So some people may have seen, or maybe still kind of see hawthorns as an association to death because they kind of smell like it. Interesting. Then you have the rowan. The rowan is a protector. The rowan is also very closely related to the mountain ash. The mountain ash is again from the genus Sorbus, as is rowan. So they're more connected, and the rowans have bright orange or red berries as one of their recognizable features. So looking at rowan folklore just showed me, no wonder I love that tree and see it as a protector because rowans are protective. So in Scotland, Ireland, Scandinavia, and other parts of Northern Europe, the rowan became associated with protection against harmful magic, misfortune, and supernatural danger. Rowan wood and berries were incorporated into protective charms and small crosses that were made from rowan. They were used to protect homes, barns, livestock, and people. So if you thought that there was fey magic afoot, you might make something from a rowan tree to put on your person, or to put on your baby, or to put in front of the barn, places like that to protect your world. How about the willow? Water, grief, and the ability to bend. Obviously, we have to talk about the willow some more. Weeping willows, of course, grow into be enormous trees that provide a ton of shelter to other animals and other organisms. A lot of willows, different kinds of willows, gravitate towards water and grow along riverbanks, ponds, wetlands, and other damp places. I can remember as a kid, we'd camp on the Teton River, and now we have these fancy hot dog sticks that are made specifically for that you just keep in a fancy little bag in your camper. But when I was a kid, we didn't have that. We had willows. I can remember as a little girl, like little, probably 5, my grandpa handing me pocket knives and saying, "Go cut yourself a switch." And you go to the river's edge and you cut your willow and bring it back, and he'd help you whittle a little point onto it so that you could roast your hot dog. That was what we did. Well, those willow branches are the point was you had to try and find one that wasn't too bendy, or your hot dog would just flop over into the fire. That's what she said. What? No. Uh, that was a horrible "that's what she said" joke. At any rate, so you'd have to find the thicker, like stronger switch if you could. Now, of course, there's lots of stories about kids being sent out to cut their own switch when they were also going to get beat, too. That wasn't my experience, but I know that is also a thing, or it used to be. But think about the willows that grow around ponds, wetlands, and other damp places. Of course, they have associations with water, emotion, intuition, the moon, grief, healing, and other feminine traditions. But willows themselves that weep were also associated with grief because of the the drooping shape of the branches. But willows, because they're so flexible, have been used for thousands of years to weave baskets, fences, fish traps, furniture, and other useful objects, boats that then were covered in like birch bark or something like that. Branches that could snap if they're rigid have been replaced with willow in lots of different applications. How about cedar? I know, Jane. I know. Cedar has long been associated with sacred smoke and protection. We still do that now, right? You may burn a bit of cedar if you're smudging a space or trying to clear some energy. I've made cedar bundles lots of times for that application. We have lots of cedars around here. Uh, Cedar is one of those trees that, again, we call cedars cedars that aren't. So you have to really know. But there is an idea that cedars carry their own magic. The cedar of Lebanon in the Middle East has been valued for thousands of years for its fragrant, durable wood. Construction, ships, temples, palaces, and other important structures, right? I mean, lots of things are made from cedar. How many of us, when we were children or young adults, received a cedar chest, right, to put all of your keepsakes and stuff in? I have one. When I was a kid, they called it a hope chest. Because remember, I was raised a Mormon kid, and the goal of Mormon girls was to get married and have babies. And so we all received these cedar chests that then you would start making things for your future home. Well, that's what you were supposed to do. We weren't so much into, my mom was a feminist and she thought that was complete nonsense. But I had friends, I don't know if this will shock you or not. It does me now. At the time, it seemed normal. But I had friends who received their hope chests when they were about 15, probably for their birthday or for Christmas. And then my friends Nikki and Marty, particularly, every birthday and Christmas, they would receive something that went in the hope chest, like a set of dishes, or a serving platter, or some towels, or some other something that their mom thought would be useful to them when they got married and moved out to their, next station in life. Can you imagine being like 16 and what you really want for your birthday is probably new clothes and some makeup, and your mom gives you a set of dishes for your future husband? Like, how insulting is that and disappointing? Anyway, crazy business. But cedar chests were a big deal because cedar repels moths. So lots of cedar objects have been used with the storage of fabrics and other uh, things like paper and things that could be potentially vandalized by moths because moths do not like cedar. Cedar appeared in the Hebrew Bible, where they were symbols of strength, beauty, prosperity, and majesty. The ancient forests of Lebanon were so famous that the cedar is still on their flag today. North American trees are often called cedar, though they may not be in quite the right genus, but that's what we call them. So here we are. Indigenous people use cedar for many purposes, for providing materials for homes, canoes, clothing, baskets, carvings, ceremonial objects, and countless other necessities, as well as sacred smoke for purification and prayer. And of course, that is very specific to certain tribes, not all tribes. How about the redwoods, sequoias, and deep thyme? Have you ever visited the redwoods or the sequoias? Pretty amazing stuff. These trees completely rearrange your understanding of time. Coastal redwoods and sequoias are so incredibly good at that. We know that some sequoias have been alive for more than 3,000 years. We know that ancient coastal redwoods can survive for well over 2,000 years. And the size of them is unbelievable. A tree alive today could have started growing during before the Roman Empire existed. Imagine that. So many generations of humans born, civilizations rising and falling, cities built, religions rise and fall, and those trees just keep on growing. And it's pretty incredible, I think. Redwoods create their own worlds. The trunks and their canopies affect light, moisture, and temperature around them and the habitat through the forest. They're not just a part of it, they are it. And then fallen redwoods continue to support life for generations after they die. Now, how about trees as oracles? Humans, ancient ones, started asking trees questions. Of course they did. Trees answer. Whether you feel a spiritual connection to a tree or you're just sitting with it, listening to what's happening within the tree while you're sitting with it, trees make plenty of their own noise. We know that the Greek sanctuary at Dodona, where Zeus was associated with a sacred oak, was a tree that was considered to be an oracle of sorts, that divine messages could move through the leaves of a tree. Pretty amazing. We also know that trees became intertwined with divination systems. Thinking about the ogam, I've showed you. I was trying to find my staves and show you. They should be sitting right here near my desk somewhere, but I'm not seeing them. So I apologize. I was going to show you, but oh, there they are. So ogam is an ancient Irish tree alphabet that has been connected with a divination system as well. So every one of the staves is symbolic of a different tree. I'll try to show you this a little better. This is what they look like. That's what they're all basic carvings, straight line carvings. And they're all in connection to a different tree. And that tree, of course, all holds different kinds of meanings. That's what ogam staves are. Now, ogam is kind of it's kind of a combination of New Age metaphysical belief and ancient Druidic belief. Because we don't know a lot. We know what's been passed down through generations, but we also know that we lost a lot when Christianity took everything over in Europe. So, at any rate, the Ogam is pretty highly contested, honestly, about how much of what we know about the Ogam is real versus what gaps have been filled by more contemporary thought. It doesn't matter so much, I guess, but either way, the Ogam was an ancient alphabet that was used uh, in ancient Ireland that some people still use now as tree-based divination. They are very cool. I think so too. I think one of the simplest forms of tree divination doesn't really require any tools at all. It just means go sit beneath a tree, ask your question out loud or in your heart, then shut the hell up and sit with the tree. You'll get your answer. How about wish trees, ribbons, and offerings? We still do this, right? You have a missing child in your town? People may start hanging up or tying ribbons on trees to represent them. You have soldiers going off to war? You may tie ribbons around trees to celebrate that or to honor that, and lots of other reasons. But people have tied cloth, ribbons, prayers, written wishes, and other offerings to trees. They've left flowers and food beneath them. In some places, coins have been pushed into tree trunks. Sacred trees have been decorated during festivals or visited as a part of pilgrimages. It was very popular once upon a time to uh, carve into trees. Don't do that, but that used to be a real thing to carve your initials and your love's initials into a tree to mark that you were there because we are so very important that everyone needs to know that we were there, right? We're such jerks. Anyway, don't carve into trees, but that is something that was done quite a bit. Jane, it's Ogam. I'll spell it for you. It's Ogham. Ogham. And Staves has an E. Staves. Okay, so getting back to offerings of trees. In Ireland, Scotland, and other Celtic regions, there was uh, famous trees near holy wells where strips of cloth or fabric were tied to branches. They were called clúdi or clúdi wells, and that's a word that refers to cloth. So the cloth might be connected to a prayer for a healing uh, or some other wish. And in some versions, this custom, the illness was believed to diminish as the fabric weathered away. We have a more modern problem with things like this because we tend to tie synthetic ribbons or plastic or other objects or materials to trees and just leave them there. And that could do a lot of damage to a tree over time. So be careful that anything that you tie onto a tree gets removed so that that doesn't happen. There's a really famous picture of a bicycle that it has been said that a man left for war in World War I, and when he came back, his bicycle had been propped up next to a tree, and had then, by the time he returned, it grew completely into the tree. Have you ever seen this before? I will show you. Yeah, that's an ancient bike. The bike from World War I that left propped up against a tree, and the tree eventually just swallowed the bike up. Pretty amazing. Kind of sad. But so if you are leaving offerings with amongst trees, make sure you remove them and don't leave them there forever. I have talked to you many times about grounding with trees, right? Sitting with trees' energy and letting it pull your energy down into its roots and ground you. Trees make us feel good. There's, of course, the Japanese concept of forest bathing, which is about spending time immersed in a forest environment. Lots of talks about walking in the woods, grounding through the woods, walking barefoot if you can. It also just means spending time amongst trees because it's good for your spirit. And there's a whole conversation about the biologic effects of spending time in places like that as well. But the key at this point is to find your tree. Maybe it's a tree in your yard. Maybe it's a tree in a forest that you get to. Maybe it's a tree that is in a local park. But find a tree that's your tree, that resonates with your spirit. That maybe you make a point of visiting once a week, that you go put your arms around or you sit with. But find a tree that's yours, that resonates with your spirit, that you can spend time with. And just let that be your grounding tree, your special tree. And don't forget to show some gratitude to your tree. But if you spend some time with one specific tree and you go back to it lots of times, your spirit, in my opinion, meshes with that tree in various ways and just creates this energy, this symbiotic relationship between you and the tree. You showing gratitude and love and perhaps doing things. Maybe you're watering the tree, or maybe you're cleaning up trash around the tree, or, things like that. The tree is feeding your spirit all the while. So that's what I've got. There's more in Luminous about trees, as well as just all of the other components that are usually in Luminous. So take a look at that. I want to thank you all so much for being here. I appreciate you guys being a part of my journey. I appreciate you coming and watching. Please like, share, comment, follow. Things like that help me to be more seen, which is good for me. And of course, I want to remind you that I am a professional psychic advisor over at one2listen.com, and you can find me over there every day. So again, it's number 2 listen.com. Look for me, Katie Weaver. If I'm not signed in and you need to talk to me, just do a callback request or a scheduled call, and I'll get right back to you. But I'm usually there doing readings, healings, animal communication, lots of energy work over there. I'll help you in any way I can. So that's what I've got. Thanks so much for being here. I'll see you next week, same place, same time. You've been listening to another edition of the Katie Weaver Show here on 1-2 Radio, where we're changing the way you listen to the world. Take care.